The year is 1995, and Hercules, the Legendary Journeys, has just launched, and after 4 years, it ends with over 100 episodes of pure mythological battles, humorous situations, and fantastical adventures. It proved so popular that one of Hercules' main allies and antagonists, Xena Warrior Princess, would get her own show where she went on increasingly high budget and ridiculous adventures herself to become a cult classic. So it's no surprise that there is a Hercules and Xena role-playing game. But who would make such a game? Well, there's only really one company. West End Games in 1998 acquired the licenses to create and distribute this TRPG, but it also proved to be one of their last. This would be one of the last new games, or games in general, as a series of financial nightmares rendered the company bankrupt and their assets sold off piecemeal to pay off their parents' debts. While the story of WEG isn't quite over, with the passing of Mr. Palter in 2020, this means that the legendary company is barely a shadow of its former self. On that cheery note, let's talk a little shop. Hercules Xena is a D6 engine game, though a very modified version called the Legend System. The Legend System is a D6 dice pool as you'd expect, but instead of pips, we're going to be more reliant on 3 up for a success. Not too complicated, but we're still working with the D6 engine, so our dice pools, which are a combination of our attribute and skills, may not be that high. Luckily, we do get the wild die as one of them, as always, of course, which can make for heroic successes and terrible defeats with the Thunderbolt of Zeus or the Eye of Hera, which is what I'd love to say if we had the custom dice anymore, but it's 1s and 6s for now. Making a character is remarkably simple, assigning a set of dice to your attributes and skills. So making a heroic gladiator, we may have a spread that looks something like this. With a smattering of some extra points, we have a few options, which if you take anything away from Hercules Xena, it's a few options is the most common phrase available. But D6 for the mathematically challenged is also an apt description. One of the more interesting aspects buried within an optional specialties rule are special moves, meant to replicate the stunts from the shows. Often these are simple things like shooting 2 arrows, or running along heads, or spinning to win. It's an interesting thing to talk about, as it is effectively a stunt system. But when we get to combat itself, simplicity is the name of the game. Simple actions, simple resolution, and especially the range increments to determine which total defense, which can be improved with reactions such as blocking or dodging for your main action, which is also, say it with me everyone, simplistic and streamlined, even pointing out that you can parry with any kind of weapon skill, so grabbing a sword is just as likely, so get ready for some fisting. So is Hercules and Xena a hidden gem? No. I didn't want to talk about Hercules Xena though, but more of the death throes of a company, even reflected in the jokier if grim writing and laissez-faire approach to graphic design. Hercules and Xena was a workshop TRPG, something that at one point may have been a great introduction to TRPGs, with a lightweight mythology-themed action game with enough goofy antics to keep most things moving along and an understandable system. Did it though? Well, most people watching this probably don't even know that Hercules or Xena had a television show, and probably base everything off of a Simpsons gab or perhaps some secondhand knowledge, let alone knowing it had a TRPG from one of our great companies. But all things must end eventually. Hercules and Xena managed to become cult fantasy shows, willing to push some boundaries and do some goofier things that would be next to impossible these days. Their TRPG, though, has faded into obscurity. Should you indulge it? Perhaps if you're a D6 fan. But perhaps it is also best to let ghosts lie. My name is Notepad, and this was Hercules and Xena, the tabletop role-playing game. If you like what I do here, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe as always. Many thanks to the philosophers and their continued contributions. Godspeed and good luck.